wandered over the treacherous trek. He was an interesting man, but he was no longer whole. Lost a hand some years back during a brouhaha on what is now called Alkenstar, or so the story he told me went. He was crossing Arcadia to make his way to Tianjia. He sought to make himself whole again. There is a place, he told me, near the Jiadao Gulf, the sea between Minkai and continental Tianjia. Somewhere in this splattering of islets, he was convinced lay the domain of a giant turtle, a being of legend, and a legend that was passed to him by a woman who had spoken with the turtle. She told my friend that the turtle had saved her father's leg when he nearly lost it after an equestrian incident. The being healed her father's leg when magic could not. So my industrious friend made his way to see this being of lore and ask it to replace his hand. Even if the legends were only partially true about the power of these spirit turtles, he knew that if he could make contact with one, it might be able to help him. So off he went. Years later, perhaps even decades had passed, I came upon my friend again. He was wealthy beyond his wildest dreams. Turns out, on his way to the Jiadao Gulf, he caught something. A fever he could not shake. He found himself destitute, alone, and dying in an alley in Hyosai, on the edge of the Okayo Ocean. It is in this city of samurai and ninja where he met Jasu, a man who took him in, nursed him back to health, and gave him a job as a trader. Jasu, you see, was very well off in the spice trade. Eventually the two men bonded and fell deeply in love and married. And when I met my friend again, it was in a bar in Absalom, at the base of the beast. He was wealthy and happy, and showered me with tales of his life. I was so glad to see him so jubilant. Humans have such short lives, you see, so I always find myself pleased when they fill them with joy. So, what happened? Did he ever meet the spirit turtle? You know, I never bothered to ask. But on that final meeting, he was in possession of both of his hands.
Hey there, creatures, and welcome to Encounter This, a podcast exploration of the creatures from Pathfinder 2nd Edition and the lore that surrounds them.
Holy mackerel! Here we are for episode 101 of Encounter This.
We made it.
We made it. This is going to be silly because my dear friend and co-host here as you know him, of course, James Reiki Kid, will has possibly bitten off more than he could chew, or maybe he strategized very particularly, but he's going to take me through a rather high-level creature for our first official round on Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I, of course, am Freeman the Eldest. Easton, that's technically true. We will be covering the Spirit Turtle in our inaugural, not really inaugural, sort of resetting, sort of, I don't know what to call it, episode of Encounter This 101. I'm excited. I don't know about you, but this Spirit Turtle actually can be found, of course, on Archives of Nethys, but this creature is coming from, spoiler alert, an adventure path. James, tell us more.
Yeah, so this is coming from Book 3, King of the Mountain, from Fist of the Ruby Phoenix on page 86, for those of you who want to follow along. For everybody else, links to Archives of Nethys will be down in the description as well as on our blog and our website. This is going to be a big one. So my thought process here was I don't really know 2E. I've run less than a handful of games. So when we decided we were going to make the pivot, I decided to go at the most intense creature I could find right off the bat. And that was a huge mistake, because when I wrote the stat block before we started even recording episode 100, and I haven't really looked at it since. So let's hope I can just infer from context clues what I meant.
And let's be fair here. I mean, for clarity for the listeners, Book 3 of Fist of the Ruby Phoenix is a level like 18 to 20 sort of part of the adventure. It's very high level. Yeah. And you say this is one of the most intense creatures you could find. This is not even close, dude.
I meant
I only did a cursory glance at the stat block. I am pretty much going in blind here, but it's not that complicated compared to some. Some of them are crazy.
Okay.
I mean, just in terms of detail, I should say, there's so many more options on some creatures that are lower level than this thing. But yeah, I can't wait to fumble through this as our start to 2E. Let's go.
Yeah, and it's we're going back to Eastern culture, so you can look forward to some of my budget pronunciations. So
the most budget.
The most budget.
If you ever need a car rental, come to us.
Well, let's start with an image. They look something like this. There's a reason this image is so small, and I couldn't really get it any bigger, but it should be on YouTube, and you should be on full screen anyway, so it'll be fine. For those of you audio listeners, it looks like a giant turtle. The caveat is that it has an entire ecosystem on their shells. Pretty much describes it.
It's really cool. Yeah, it's the actual. I mean, I'm kind of curious about the actual size, actual dimensions of this creature, because it's got an ecosystem on its back. It's kind of cool. But you can see some what are they, cranes, or herons on its back?
Probably an ibis or something. But yeah,
and they look fairly sizable compared to this thing. I was expecting it to be much more gargantuan compared to, say, the size of a larger bird like that. So to me, it makes it look like the Spirit Turtle's smaller than I was expecting.
Yeah, it is. It is smaller than I was expecting too, because I was expecting something like the dragon turtle from Avatar: The Last Airbender, where it's just this massive being.
Yeah,
and it's very similar, but it is not the same. And I didn't touch on that specifically because there is a dragon turtle in Pathfinder. So. Oh,
okay. Good to know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, please do go on. I love the art, though. By the way, at the end of the day, I think it's just like. It's almost comfortable, which maybe is a weird word for it, but it makes me feel comfortable.
No, it really is. It's kind of derpy in like a really joyful way. Like it's got real Kung Fu Panda vibes in all the best ways.
Yeah. It's got real kind eyes.
Yeah. So this is a fey creature. And they are known to be very benevolent and help people who are in need, specifically usually with healing, but sometimes they'll give other powerful gifts. And there's not really an analog in 1E, so I couldn't do any like really deep dive. There is, again, the dragon turtle from 1E, but not the same creature. So,
okay, all right.
The lore around the spirit turtle is very minimal, so I kind of fleshed it out with some other regional lore because this is our first dive into 2e, and there's some stuff we haven't covered, and I don't know if we'll ever cover. So,
Okay.
In ancient times, it was said they used their power to grant mortals wishes, but after millennia, they grew tired and went into hiding. So people just wanted too much from them, so they were just like, "Fuck this! We need a nap. We're gonna fuck off."
Right. I wonder if like wish granting was literally like physically cumbersome, or if they were just like, they're so needy and they give nothing back. I'm done. You know.
Well, so it's the second one, and we'll get into that in a second here. So those who didn't go into hiding return to their home plane, which is a place called the First World, which we'll touch on in the future here. Mm-hmm. And the few that remain now only grant their gifts to the purest and worthiest mortals. So it's at the very end of each 2e stat block, at least on Archives of Nethys, there's a little more lore. I don't understand why it's there. It's absolutely not the right place for it, but it is there. Okay. The spirit turtle, this one is called Spiritual Task. So they grant extended life as a gift for completing a task, and the requirements vary from turtle to turtle, but they're always particularly massive. And Archives of Nethys presents this example called Artemis the Tailor.
Okay.
Artemis met with a spirit turtle and earned their favor by sewing a quilt as massive as the lake in which the turtle slept. The quilt required cloth from all the robes of each ruler in Tianjia, but Artemis's efforts eventually earned him a golden needle to aid him on his journeys.
See, I love these little things. You say like it doesn't seem like it fits. It's in the wrong spot.
No, I just think it's in the wrong space. Like it shouldn't be below the stat block. I think it should be above the stats.
So there's a reason for that. It's a formatting thing. If we get through that, so you might remember when I covered this a little bit in when we covered golems, and I was doing 2e interjections. These little sidebars, they're sidebars in the books. They're not parts of the lore. They're little optional applicable things to the creature. So the way they're formatted in the books dictates how Archives of Nethys formats them on the page.
Oh yeah, I totally get that. It's just wrong. It's like if you're gonna put in lore, put it in with the lore. Don't put it after the lore and then after the stat block. Like that formatting on the website makes no sense. It's fine to break it out because it is broken out, but
I am kind of with you. It doesn't make sense that it's below the stat block. They could just as easily set it aside, but put it just underneath the lore in its own little sidebar.
Yep.
You know, but
easily
just, for whatever reason it's at the bottom. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there's a reason somewhere for it behind the scenes, but we don't like it here to encounter this. So
it's probably the way it's automated.
Damn you and your really easily accessible free content. How dare you?
I'm sure it's just the way it's automated. Like there's no way somebody's manually typing all this stuff in. So it's just it's pulled from something directly, and that's just the way it pulls. But
it's the way it do, yeah.
Yeah. But that's it.
That's still I love that little sidebar though. It is nice. It's a nice little addition. It's cool to like come up with like some ridiculous but makes you curious about that little example even is what does that golden needle do to aid him? Exactly.
Yeah, so I hunted for that item in both 1 and 2e, and like nothing. It doesn't exist. There's no golden needle.
Damn, you set me
I
up.
thought it might be a specific magical item, or I thought it might just be like a regular, like maybe it's Artemis's golden needle, or maybe it's just a golden needle and it, +1 to crafting or whatever. Nope, not a single thing.
Sounds like it's ripe for some homebrew.
You bet. But that's it. That's the dragon turtle.
Cool. Fun times.
Yeah. So I figured we'd talk a little bit about the First World because I found this concept really interesting.
Yeah, I did a little bit again cursory research on the First World too, because I'm often a little bit confused about the First World, or in D&D was the Feywild. And I think the way it's set up in Pathfinder and that sort of universe of Galarian is pretty neat. So
yeah, so it was It was a draft of the material plane. It was the first draft of the material plane. It was crafted by gods to test their crafting abilities and color palettes before creating their final version. So pretty much a dry run, except this particular one had living beings.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is the laws of nature in the first world fluctuate constantly to mimic the mercurial nature of its denizens, which are fey creatures. So all fey creatures originate in the first world.
Okay.
And because those laws of nature do ebb and flow, that means distance and time are inconsistent. So mortal travelers could spend an hour and travel at 100 kilometers only to find that they've moved a meter and 100 years have passed on the material plane.
Right.
Or what have you. So like that's just the most extreme example I could think of, but it absolutely has everything in between.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the plane's proximity to the positive energy plane, it ensures that this particular plane is teeming with life. So that's where the Fae come from. And a lot of it is strange and unusual life.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the gods abandon it to create the mortal plane, these divine beings known as the Eldest came down and essentially took over because they have godlike powers, or they have deific powers, though they're not technically gods in the way that Galarian constrains gods. They've
I've always
themselves.
I've always noticed they're referred to as divine entities. It's like usually the phrasing that I've come across, and I believe they're not quite a pantheon. Maybe you can worship them as a pantheon.
You can,
I mean,
and
probably,
I actually dive into them in a little bit.
Okay.
As well, just because I really
cool.
wanted to flush this episode out, and
They're
I thought
pretty
that was a
neat
really
too, I
interesting
remember.
idea.
Yeah.
The other big thing about the first world is that it stands outside the cycle of souls, which is known by the Fae as the Great Abandonment. So there's no real thing as true death in the first world.
Yeah.
Though the eldest worshippers' souls reincarnate there as Fae. So if you were to worship the Eldest really well on the material plane, when you died, your soul would be reincarnated in the first world as a Fae being.
Mm-hmm. Right. Which is really cool. And I believe like death for something in the Fae or the first world, it just reincarnates. It just has its own independent cycle outside of the other planes. And what I think is really cool about because it has a proximity to the positive energy plane, and that's why it's teeming with life. There's like this bleed of the energy from that plane, right? And that's where as far as I know, that's where all souls come from, is that the energy plane just like spontaneously produces them, and then they are taken care of, and then they are put into the material plane. But there's this bleed off that's happening at the same time into the first world, which is it's pretty neat, I think. And I think I remember reading, and maybe you're gonna cover it. Sorry, but that like you're right. It's like there's no true death in for beings from the first world unless they leave the first world, such as gnomes.
Yep, that's literally almost verbatim my next point.
Nailed it.
Yeah, true death returns if they leave if the
Who's
natives say
presenting
leave,
to who?
like the gnomes did. Yeah. And there are these natural gates in wild places that connect it directly to the material plane, which Fae often use to fulfill their desires, be it whatever they have. Cool. They can just pop over to the material plane, do some shit, and pop back. It's like shopping in the city.
Crazy. But like they're not still subject to that like insane, time chaos erraticness, like pop in, pop out.
Probably, but
must be
since there's no
right?
such thing as true death, except when you're outside of the Fae, what is time? If
right,
the only reason I think we as a species measure time is because we have a finite amount of it.
Right.
If we didn't have a finite amount of it, there'd be no reason to measure it. So if a Fae popped over for a couple of weeks and didn't die and managed to pop back, and it happened to be 40 centuries, would that really be a big deal?
Doesn't matter, yeah. But I guess the opposite direction, it is a big deal, right? Anyone from the material plane that's popping in and popping out, that's the danger. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
that makes
that
sense.
is a huge danger. If I'm not 100% sure because I don't know my gnomes inside and out, but I think the first world is like a taboo in gnome culture because of that concept, because of popping in and out could be
Oh, really?
be very difficult. I'm very prepared to be corrected on that, but that stands out as something that I had read in the past.
Fair enough. Yeah. It makes me wonder if did gnomes really did like the entirety of gnomes leave en masse, or is it just like the vast majority? And surely there's some gnomes that still live there. I would think, but yeah, just I know that it's all tied into the bleaching and all that stuff. It's really really interesting, kind of like concept for like a player character ancestry and stuff. I love that stuff. We'll get into it one day. I'm sure.
Yeah. But let's just do a little primer on the Eldest. They are a group of highly powerful beings that stepped in to fill the deific void when the gods forsook the first world, like we touched on. They do hold deific power over the world, but they don't have the same ambitions as other pantheons.
Okay.
So they're not really interested in their worshippers at all. They're really only concerned with their own personal agenda, and they will distribute power to avatars, but that's really just for their own amusement. Like it's very...
Okay.
It really strikes me as something like that the Fae would do. Like, I'm bored. Let's give this
Right.
being a little bit of power to see what happens.
Yeah. Okay.
There are a few worshippers of the Eldest on Galarian. The most of them are Fae and gnomes, and they usually are solo in their practice, but reside near the gates. So, this I think is an awesome character hook. Like to be a gnome who's a worshiper of the Eldest, like a hermit worshiper of the Eldest, and then your character would know no fear, like because when you die, you'll just be reincarnated in the first world.
Right. And like what a cool sometimes it's a bit cheesy to seek a way to like bring a character that might have died back. But this is what I think this adds a little flavor to that. That's really cool. It's like you have this Eldest worshiping gnome. I was in the same spot as you as soon as you started it, and they die and they get reincarnated into the first world, and like somehow they make it back. And even if it's not the same adventure, like they're reincarnated and it takes a blip in the first world, but 20 years later in your next massive adventure, the same character comes back, in like
it wouldn't necessarily be the same character because they just get reincarnated into another Fae, so it may not be another gnome.
Fair. Right. But it could be the same person in a different form. Yeah. Coming back as an NPC or something like that. Yeah. I love that. I love that. That makes me wish there was like I'm sort of running with the assumption there isn't because I haven't really looked at gnomes in a while, but it would be really cool if there was a heritage for gnomes that was, first world reincarnated, so it's like someone died and reincarnated in the first world as a gnome, and then they're back on the material plane, and there's like that adds a little something to the ancestry. That'd be really neat.
Yeah. So the closest thing that we have currently is the Fae touch gnome.
Okay. Cool.
So that's probably where you want to go. Fae touch gnomes specifically they meditate to realign themselves with the first world. This is actually a 10-minute downtime activity that has the concentrate trait.
Okay. Cool.
But what it really does is just gives you a primal cantrip.
Oh, all right. That's neat though. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting background. Now that I know more about the first world, this holds a lot more appeal than it did when I first read it. Mm-hmm. Like I'm not really a gnome guy most of the time. Every now and again, I'll find a character that's best suited as a gnome.
Yeah.
But if I did do one, I think I would do something like a Fae touch gnome, and maybe something like a necromancer could be a cool way to play with it.
Yeah.
I've frozen on video.
Oh no!
It's okay. It's not in an embarrassing way. It'll be fine.
At least it's frozen on my best face.
Yeah, there we go.
It's on my good side.
Yeah.
No, I'm kind of with you. Like, I'm not really a gnome person so much. However, classically, and of my favorite character I ever made and played in our home group or whatever that you ran was a gnome, Captain Kickshaw. I still dream about expanding that story and character and stuff.
One of these days, I'm going to sit you down and tell you what I had planned.
You should, because I've actually like toyed with the idea. I was like, if I ever find the actual want and time, like really, really inspired, I would love to just make like what's that word? Like a youth book, like a youth not
Like
a
YA
children's
novels?
book. Yeah, exactly. Young adult novel.
Okay.
About Captain Kickshot. I think that'd be really fun.
Yeah, that'd be. I mean, it's a really cool character.
Yeah, because I don't think I have the writing chops for a proper novel. So I feel like it would have to be a young adult novel, and I'm okay with that.
There's nothing wrong with that. Every genre needs a hero.
Mm-hmm.
I do have the eldest listed out here, but it's just a proliferary dive. So again, if you want to click onto the show notes, it's all hyperlinked, and you can just pop to the ones that interest you from there, or you can just head over to Archives of Nethys. Mm-hmm. The first one is Count Ranalk. It's Ranalc, which is not an organization of letters I've ever seen before.
Yeah.
But they are known as the Traitor. They are chaotic neutral. There is Imbrex, the Twins, lawful neutral. Magda, the Three, lawful neutral. Ragadan, the Waterlord, chaotic evil. Ng, the Hood, neutral. That's just spelled NG. So that's the if I throw any harder on the G, I'm gonna get canceled. Sheka, the Many, also neutral. The Green Mother, aka the Feasting Flower, neutral evil. The Lantern King, also known as the Laughing Lie, chaotic neutral. And the Lost Prince, the Melancholy Lord, true neutral. So you may have noticed that there's not a single good deity here.
Yep. Nope.
Which is
they
just
all
pretty
about
fantastic.
their own shit. Yeah. I actually remember the Many. And you may or may not remember this, but well, you will when I tell you. You ran a 1E one shot one time. We didn't quite finish. It was a long time ago, and I made an android without permission, even knowing you probably wouldn't be happy about it.
Yeah, I remember.
But you gave in because you had not explicitly said no androids. And yeah, he served the Many, and he was like if I recall correctly, the Many basically have it's like a one entity that a soul keeps like reincarnating into or something like that. I don't remember the details, to be honest, but I was basically a servant of the Many, where the same soul kept going into new bodies, which was what kind of canon with the lore. And so that's why I was an android. It was like, wasn't really about the sci-fi aspects so much as like this was the proper vessel for a soul to travel into and occupy, as it continues its long journey.
Right. Yeah. So in 2E, Shaika isn't a being so much as a title. So there's a bunch of them.
Right.
And so they become Shaika as time is needed, but they travel forward and backward in time, and they're constantly moving through that stream.
That's right.
And each one at a specific interval is known as Shaika.
Cool. Yeah. So there's always a Shaika at any point in time. Yeah. That's why they're called the Many, but they're all one and the same across time. I love that shit. It's so weird and mind-bending and stupid. And I love it.
Yeah. But that's it for 2E lore.
All right. I love it. We didn't talk much about the Spirit Turtle, but I love these primers on things like the First World and the Eldest.
Yeah, so honestly, fun. There's like 2 paragraphs about the Spirit Turtle, and we covered them both in probably more depth than was required.
Nailed it.
Okay, so that'll bring us on to real world lore.
Let's do it.
Okay, so like I mentioned at the top of the show, the Spirit Turtles are firmly rooted into in East Asian culture, both a turtle and a tortoise. So we've got both sides of the...
Okay.
Yeah. And in all that I've found, they're believed to represent longevity. And in Chinese culture, they are chief among all shelled creatures.
Mm-hmm.
We got a couple of images. So there's the 2E Spirit Turtle again. And this is called Immortal Riding a Turtle. It is from the Han Dynasty Nanyang City, China. I couldn't find an artist. This is pulled directly from the Wikipedia page, so this is the best we got. But you can see them kind of kneeling on the turtle as it I don't know, takes them somewhere, which is great.
What's he holding?
I think it's a peacock.
That's what I was gonna say. I'm pretty sure it looks like a peacock or something.
Yeah, but I honestly have no idea.
Yeah.
It's a really cool image though, and we'll throw a bigger one up on Instagram when we get there. But so we're going to start with something called the Ira or Era. I couldn't find a pronunciation guide for this particularly. Again, hyperlinked in the show notes if you're interested in learning more about this. This is the first surviving Chinese dictionary, and it originates from about the 3rd century BC or 201 to 300, and it has some entries on a divine turtle. So this was written by an unknown author, though it is thought to have been written by the Duke of Zhao or Confucius or one of Confucius's disciples. It's really difficult to tell. As a white person who's not indoctrinated in the culture, I have a hard time following some of this stuff, and this is one of those things that I had a really hard time following.
Okay.
But the entry for spirit turtle simply reads, "The most sacred of turtles."
Oh. All right. That's that.
Yeah. However, according to Ren Fang, author of the Shiyugi, once a turtle has lived to over 1,000 years, it grows hair. And once it hits 5,000 years, that's when it becomes a spirit turtle.
Oh. So presuming that they live thousands of years. Gotcha.
Yeah. And then there's one other Chinese text that we're going to talk about, and it's called the Bao Puzit. It is an alchemical text, or as close to alchemy as the Chinese get, by somebody called Ko Hung. They go by other names, but from what I could tell, Ko Hung is the most accurate of the names. And this recognizes a spirit turtle as one that is only 1,000 years old, but it must have the 5 colors representing the elements: blue for water, red for fire, yellow for earth, white for air, and black for metal or wood. Shit.
Okay.
Shit.
Black
I think
wood?
it's metal.
Okay.
So at some point it became 6 elements, and it was metal and wood.
Okay.
I thought I had that, and now I'm second guessing myself.
Black for Black Sabbath. Rock on.
Yeah. What are the Chinese? Yeah. Okay, it's wood. God, I hope it's wood.
So not.
Eventually, it becomes 6, and metal and wood are. So it's one of the two. Oh, Jesus Christ!
Oh, for the love of Confucius! Get your shit right.
Oh, yeah. I didn't write any of that down. I should have. Maybe white is wood and black is air. I don't. It's some combination. I am so sorry to any of our Chinese listeners. I should do better. Okay, white is metal. No, that's not right either. Oh my God, the internet's letting me down. We're just gonna blow past that.
That's it. Roll back the changes. We're not doing Pathfinder anymore. Just take
going back to
100
1
down.
Instead, we're just gonna jump across the water to Japan, where we have this guy here.
Oh,
so this
is awesome.
Yeah, this image is the reason why all the other images are so small. For whatever reason, you can't individually resize an image in OBS, but here, you just resize all of them. So here we are. I didn't want to cut any of this off because it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, this is by Zhang Gi Shen. I don't know what it depicts other than something called a Reiki.
Okay.
Yeah. So in Zenrin Kushu, meaning the anthology of passages from the Forest of Zen, which is a book. It is a collection of writings used in Rinzai, which is the school of Zen initially compiled by Toyo Echio. And Rinzai is one of the 3 sects of Buddhism, which draws a lot of its connections from the Mahayana sutras of India, which closely studies Chinese Chan traditions. So like Buddhism kind of originated, from what I can tell, in India, grew into China, and then was eventually adopted in Japan and kind of got really interbled into Shintoism.
Okay.
And this is one of those that really, one of the three teachings. This is the one that most closely resembles its Indian counterparts.
Gotcha.
So this book provides like a story or a passage that simply reads, "The spirit turtle sweeps its tail." So what that is thought to mean, or be a variation of, is a phrase called that goes, "Erasing traces creates traces."
Oh.
So what exactly that means is kind of nebulous, and I want to say up for debate, but I really didn't dig too much into it because interpreting Buddhist sayings is not going to be high on the internet's priority list in a way that is accurate.
Yeah.
What I think it means is, even if you are like when you erase something, you're still creating something. You know, when you erase pencil off paper,
Right.
you're creating eraser dust.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking, because especially with the reference to the turtle's tail sweeping, as if to remove its tracks, along the sand, it's still creating this sort of like different shape to the stand that's going to stand out from the rest of what's around it, and that's something that's less natural and more created. I totally follow that.
Yeah, so I think that's what it means. I am obviously prepared to be corrected. I am not a Buddhist scholar, and I'll never be, but I do find it quite fascinating.
Yeah, I do too. Whatever it is you try to erase, just remember, there's always something left behind.
Yeah. Or
which is why we don't actually have privacy in the modern world.
So let's hold on there. I think it's more to the effect that even if you're destroying something, you're creating something in the same breath.
Sure.
So
okay.
If you demo a house, you are destroying the house, but you're also creating rubble. Or you're creating new land or something like that. Like I think that's what it's supposed to mean. Even destructive acts are acts of creation.
Gotcha.
But the Reiki is a popular motif at Shinto shrines and Buddhist temples throughout Japan. And there are several temples called the Regizan, and Regizan directly translates to Spirit Turtle Mountain.
Okay.
Okay. And it is said...
Sorry, I can see the note. I can see what's coming up. Get ready.
Yeah. Kamioka, Hamakimangu Shrine at Sendai is named so because the spirit turtle appeared while it was being constructed. Normally I'd go back and try it again. We're just going to blow through that.
That's something else.
My bad, Japanese listeners. There is this very similar analog in Korean known as the Yongui. I could not find any information about this whatsoever. Every time I tried to Google it, it would autocorrect it to another Korean figure that we are just not going to talk about on air.
Yeah.
For reasons that you would understand if you were involved in the culture or accidentally Googled him a lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I kept trying different variations of the spelling of this, and I just kept accidentally Googling him, and let's just move on.
Just move on for that. Okay. Don't bother Googling it. Let's just
No.
What you do want to Google is that there is someone on the Pathfinder 2nd Edition subreddit that is regularly releasing homebrew stat blocks for and information for Korean gods, and they're really fucking cool. So do it. Look that up on the Reddit. Anyway.
Yeah, look that up.
Yeah.
And the last culture we're going to touch on is Hindu. So we'll start with Kurma, who is Vishnu's second avatar. And there's a quote here that goes, "Whenever humanity is threatened by extreme social disorder and wickedness, God will descend onto the world as an avatar to restore the righteousness, establish cosmic order, and redeem humanity from danger." I just thought that was particularly appropriate currently. And here's an image of Vishnu.
Yeah.
Vishnu in their second avatar right there. I think that's such a beautiful image.
Yeah.
So that's Vishnu and Karma. And the last one is Akupara. This is the cosmic world turtle. And this may sound familiar to some of our listeners because I am a big Terry Pratchett fan. This is a giant turtle that carries 8 elephants on its back, and the elephants hold up the world.
Which is Discworld, right?
Well, this in this belief, it would be our world.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this is actually part of the Hindu belief, Akupara.
Oh, it is. Okay, sorry. I thought you were just going
Yeah.
straight into the old
No,
Terry
no,
Pratchett
no.
there. Okay.
So if in Terry Pratchett, it is a disc on their back, not a hemisphere. So this is that is
Literally a
our
flat
world
Earth. Yeah.
on top of those
Yeah.
elephants. Yeah.
Cool. I did not realize that was part of an actual belief.
Yeah, I didn't either. But I've
Cool.
heard the name Akupara before. I think I probably heard it from the Discworld series. If I'm being perfectly honest, I think that's the name of
Sure.
the turtle in Discworld.
Yeah.
But I thought it was so cool. I love that this is part of that belief structure. I don't know if it's like a part of the belief structure that's taken literally, or whether
Yeah.
it's just something that's kind of in the periphery, or if it's a metaphor or something like that. But I
Sure,
would be
yeah.
remiss not to throw it in there because this to me is a giant turtle with an ecosystem on its back. It just
Yeah.
happens to have another
Right.
ecosystem on their back.
In this case, the ecosystem is much larger than our earliest image.
Yes.
But I the thing that does come to mind with this image is that one elephant with the trunk raised up, and just imagine being on that part of the world, and this giant something just comes out of the horizon. It's just looming in the air. You're like, what the hell is that? What is that wrinkly gray thing descending doom upon us?
Right. So back in the day, the BBC did a 2-part video of a bunch of those Terry Pratchett books, and including The Color of Magic. And in The Color of Magic, they go to the end of the world, and you see something very similar to that. Where I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it or read it, because it is an amazing read. It's like you can read it in a day. It's a really light.
Cool.
But highly recommend the film as well. And they did a couple others, including The Hogfather and Going Postal, which is probably my favorite.
Cool.
But that's it for IRL lore, or the section that we are now calling Mythology and Folklore.
Because we've never been able to land on a good name for this section.
Yeah, that's still not a good name. So if you got anything out there in listener land, feel free to shoot us an email or hit us up on one of the socials, because I would love to get a better, more concise name for it. Everything we've come up with sounds cheesy.
Yeah. I don't know. This is the simplest one. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
simple.
This one is passable for sure.
Sometimes it's mythology. Sometimes it's folklore. What's the difference? I don't know.
I used to know.
blah. Yeah.
Yeah, but there is a difference between mythology, legend, and folklore, and I can't remember.
Yeah.
But
We could just call it ridiculousnesses of the past.
that feels culturally insensitive.
Sorry, I am 100% at all times in this section thinking about how the homunculus episode and how in the second excerpt about creating a mandragora, we have to drown bats in milk. That's where I'm at every time. That's what I'm waiting for and expecting.
You are absolutely not wrong about it. A lot of it being ludicrous and insane, but
Yeah.
I feel like we probably shouldn't just blanket Hindu and Japanese folklore as batshit crazy, because a lot of it's really beautiful.
No, it is though. It is. It truly is. Yeah. I guess the more Western culture witchcraft stuff, maybe not so much.
Yeah,
but,
any of that white people shit. That shit is crazy. Alchemy is
that's just
broken.
cray.
Yeah,
Yeah. But the turtle, erasing traces to create traces is actually pretty cool. It's actually pretty cool. So no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Yeah, if you put some thought into it, it's kind of beautiful.
Yeah. Keep it simple.
But that'll bring us to our next section, the mechanics.
I'm so pumped. I tell you,
Okay.
I am pumped for this for a particular reason. And
Okay.
it's because, one, I love Pathfinder mechanics, second edition mechanics specifically, and I can't wait for us to get a lot of this wrong, for us to be corrected later, which is more likely this time around than what we were covering in 5e with our little active community. And but I love being corrected in a way because it just helps me understand the system more, and I dig it. I really dig it. I'm into it.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. That's why I dug into one of the bigger creatures that I could find.
Yeah.
And I think I may have just like searched for highest creature level,
Yeah. Okay.
assuming that they were going to have all that stuff in there. So again, I wrote this before we did the episode 100, so the style is a little bit different than that episode, but it will revert back to that episode 100. We've decided that's going to be our template going forward, so this may be a little out of order compared to some of the other episodes, but
Sure.
deal with it.
This is our show, not yours.
Yeah, exactly. My house. Creature level 21, starting off huge.
Oh man, you nuts.
Yep. As for rarity, they are rare. They are chaotic good. They are gargantuan, and they are fey.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Fey we knew. Gargantuan makes sense. Rare also makes sense.
Yep.
Chaotic good will be changing in the future, as most of you might know.
Yeah,
but we'll keep covering those
their expulsion of alignments.
until that time comes. I'm sure we'll keep covering it, because it's applicable as far as the rules we're going to cover now go.
Yeah, and I also think it's interesting because it gives you an idea of how to play the creature.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you should be beholden to your alignment. Your alignment should never dictate what your character is. Like we said time and time again, alignment is fluid.
Oh, over.
But alignment should influence how you're playing the creature.
Yeah.
And knowing
it's a bit
that this
easy. It's a bit
giant
easier for a
wish-giving
creature.
turtle is chaotic good,
Yeah.
you can just be like, well, maybe fuck you.
Yeah.
All right. They got a perception of 35. They speak Common, Sylvan, and tongues. So I love tongues. This is kind of what I've always thought telepathy should be in 5e. They just understand all words regardless of the language and speak the same language as other creatures. Like just universal translate, ba weep grana weep ninny bong kind of shit. This is how it should be done. However, this is a spell. This is technically a 5th level divination spell, but with some passive abilities, or just the way, or like a constant ability to spellcast. That's just how they speak.
Okay. So they are effectively at all times under the effects of this divine spell.
Correct.
Cool. I dig it.
There are a couple of skills that they have a boost to, specifically diplomacy. All lores, like just says all subcategories.
Amazing.
Yeah, just a
So
plus
good.
34 in case you were wondering.
Yes,
Medicine.
I can tell you all about cutlery and all of its history. But why,
Yeah.
Spirit Turtle? Why do you know about cutlery? I know about all things.
Exactly. Omnipotence.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. They've also got a plus 40 to medicine, and then a boost to nature, occultism, and survival, which are I find less interesting.
Okay.
Sometimes creatures come with items and interact abilities. This does not, because it's a giant turtle with a forest on its back, essentially.
Yep.
But it has a 45 AC, 320 hit points, but from that 325, it has regeneration 25, which is deactivated by cold iron or evil.
Classic.
So every turn it just heals 25.
That's it at the beginning of the turn. Not only that, regeneration goes a step further because it's not fast healing. It's fast healing, 25. Start of the turn, 25 every time. That's it. But but regeneration doesn't stop after death is the thing. After you take this thing down, I don't remember the rules right out of the gate. Do you have them there?
No, I don't. There's not even a hyperlink to regeneration in Archives of Nethys, so I
Okay.
didn't even think to look.
Oh, they failed. It's basically that if you gain the dying condition and never increase beyond dying 3, as long as regeneration is active. So you cannot. So if you were to play this creature using the dying rules that's usually applied to PCs, which is an option, and this is specifically a creature only ability. This is not something that PCs can get. Rules is written. So basically, they cannot increase beyond dying 3, which means they cannot die. So you can just keep hitting them, and they will eventually just wake up and keep regenerating every turn, every 6 seconds. The only way to stop that is with the listed damages. So they have to effectively, however you want to run it, whether it's they die, they just don't die, and then you have to hit them with this damage, and then you just can automatically assume they die, or you can go through those rules of, okay, you've hit them with evil or cold iron, but they're dying 1. You're like, oh shit, now they're dying 2, now they're dying 3. You got to keep that damage on. You have to keep applying it, otherwise they are coming back.
Right. Which I love. I love the idea of you just, if in the odd, and I mean this not hyperbolically, in the incredibly odd chance that you get into combat with a spirit turtle, I love the idea that it just, combat ends and it wakes back up and it's like, I'm not actually dead.
Yeah. Let me tell you more about the cutlery. Just stop it.
There's more bookbinding knowledge to impart to you.
Let me tell you about spirits and the lore behind them.
Gin was originally known as Dutch courage.
Make sure you listen to Stemming the Tide for a couple of those jokes, everyone.
So it has a couple of resistances, fire 20 and physical 15. So if I understand this correctly, so you have to get above. So if you're going to hit it with fire, your damage has to be above 20 to do anything.
Yep. That's
okay.
Brutal.
And then the weakness is the one I don't fully understand. So there's a weakness, cold iron 20. So anytime you hit it with cold iron, does it do an extra 20 or a flat 20?
Nah, it takes 20 damage straight up, just flat kind of thing.
Okay.
on top of whatever you hit it with.
Okay, so it is an extra 20, not a flat 20.
Yeah, but it is flat, but it's an addition. I guess it's like not a variable 20. That's what I meant. I mixed
right.
up I got my merds all mixed up, as my mother would say.
Okay.
But yeah, it just works sort of the opposite of how resistances do. If that is happening,
that's what I thought. But we had a fight with a golem where it was explained in a way that I didn't fully understand.
Golems are a very, very specific exception. They have what's called golem anti-magic, which works very differently. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, we'll do a 2 golem suit at some point.
They literally don't have weakness and resistance in this, it listed in this way. They might, like, to some degree, but like their anti-magic is a separate mechanic. Yeah. They're really cool and brutal.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
So they have a 30-foot land speed and a 40-foot swim speed. Wow. We're both losing our words here. Welcome back. They have one passive ability, I guess the best way to put it. It's called Pacifying Aura. So this is the emotional, enchantment, and primal traits. It extends 100 feet, and all creatures are subject to 10th level calm emotions. That's what I mean by the very odd chance that you get into a fight with a spirit turtle.
Sure. Yeah.
Because your will save is DC 44.
Oh boy.
So this is only for 1 hour. Even if the creature leaves an aura, they are still under the effect of this 10th level calm emotions. And then after, the creature is immune for an hour.
Okay.
So if you fail that will save, you are forcibly calmed into a non-violent state, is what calm emotions does.
Oh, gotcha. Interesting. I love this because like the calm emotions is, I mean, it's a level 2 spell. I'm sure, I don't know if it heightens or not, but standardly it's only a 10-foot burst.
Yep.
And you have to sustain it up to a minute, but this thing just has it at 100 feet.
Yep.
For an hour. It's right in there with the tongues,
giant
right?
turtle
They just
shit.
have this effect on them. It's great. I love that.
Yep. There is, that'll move us into the actions.
Mhm.
Okay, so the first is a free action. It's called Environmental Balance. This is the evocation and primal traits. And the trigger is whenever a spirit turtle starts their turn. They just choose an energy for their attack: acid, cold, electricity, or fire.
Oh, okay.
And then their first actual attack is Jaws. It's a single action. So in Pathfinder 2e, there is a multiple attack penalty because you can attack as many of your 3 actions as you want. Mm-hmm. So I'll just list all 3 of them in order. Traditionally it's a -5 unless the weapon is agile, in which case it's a -4. Mm-hmm. So the first attack would be at a +37 year roll. Second attack is a +32, and third attack is a +27. All of which are high enough.
Yeah. It's funny how consistent and tight the math is in 2e, and how like every +1 or -1 matters, but it still really scales at this at a faster and larger rate than say 5e, right? Like those numbers get really high even though 1 or 2 really matters. And I love that. As a non-math guy, I love that.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a magical attack. It has 20-foot range, so it can get you from 20 foot away. It's 4d12 plus 14 bludgeoning plus 2d6 of that energy that it shows at the beginning of its turn, that environmental balance energy. So if it shows cold, it's an extra 2d6 of cold. This also has the improved grab trait. So as a free action, if it hits, it just grabs you.
All right. I love it. It's free action. You're apt.
Yep.
You only see those in the higher level creatures for sure. I mean, I'm sure you see them in lower level creatures than this, but yeah, it's a very, very effective and deadly tool.
Yep. Yeah. Its next attack is a single action. It's a foot. I'm assuming it's a foot stomp. I just wrote foot. No, it just says foot. So it
Definitely
could be a stomp. It could be a kick.
Definitely ninja kick.
That sounds right. This is also 37,
fact,
32, 27.
If you use it 3 times in a row, it's basically Liu Kang's bicycle kick.
Right.
Just imagine.
Or just 3 of its 4 legs.
Just splaying out in different directions.
Yeah.
That's like little brother from Homestar Runner.
No, I think if he was a one-legged elephant called Tenderfoot. I could power a whole city with my whining.
Oh, I probably
could.
We're showing our age.
Try and link that episode in the description. Yeah. This one's also 20 feet reach. It is 4d10 this time, plus 14 bludgeoning, plus 2d6 of that energy. This one has improved knockdown. So as a free action, it just knocks down if it hits.
Yeah. That's just amazing. Yeah.
Boot you on your ass.
Yeah.
The last single action is called Constrict. This is only applicable while it's grabbing a creature. So you bite with 1 action, you grab free action, then you can constrict with your second action. And you still got 1 action left to kick if you want.
Oh boy.
This is 2d12 plus 7 bludgeoning and a DC 41 basic fortitude save.
Okay. 2d12? On
4d12.
archives, it's okay. 4d12. Okay. Oof.
Yep.
Damn. I'm scared. I'm actually scared to play or run a level 20 fight or something like that. It's like I don't.
Yeah.
Brutal.
In 2 actions, that's 8d12, 24 bludgeoning, and 2d6 energy, and you're grabbed.
Crazy.
And you still got another action.
Ooh.
Like crazy shit. Its last attack per se is a 2 action called Unbalancing Stomp. This is a 1d4 cooldown. So after you use it, you roll a 1d4, and that's how many rounds you have before you can use it again. If I understand it correctly, it's very similar to a recharge. Yep. So in this, you make a foot strike. And creatures get hit by a shockwave, whether or not it connects, in a 15-foot radius. and they take 10d10 bludgeoning plus 48 energy plus they're knocked prone.
Mhm.
However, there is a basic reflex save, again, DC 41, and the success of that reflex is that you're not knocked prone. So you're still taking 10d10 and 48 energy.
Sorry. Quick correction. A critical success is you're not knocked prone.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Which is not very likely given the circumstances. I love that.
That would require a 51 on the die.
Right? You better all be playing rogues and swashbucklers.
Or monks.
Or monks, yeah. The important note here, though, it specifies 15-foot burst centered on the target. So a burst is usually, if memory serves, on a corner of a square when it comes to the map and the grid. But this is centered on the target. And considering the size of this creature, this is not an emanation. Emanation is like, a separate thing. You really just said radius, but it's really just like you have to kind of consider those things. So some people might misinterpret that as like they stomped and then it extends from the whole creature and this massive creature and it hits everybody. Make sure you don't do that. That would be way too powerful. So it is.
Yeah. So it makes a foot stomp, and then whether or not that foot stomp hits, that's where the burst comes from, is that target. So that 5-foot square.
Yeah. So it's really that's a very important specific detail for those who are still navigating the rules. Make sure that you're going from a particular point of this gargantuan creature, which, by the way, is standardly 20 feet or more on the grid square. And you can kind of give or take if they're tall or long. This is technically would be a longer creature. Which is actually might bring it down about 15 feet, or you kind of navigate by 5 feet or so as you go. Really, really gnarly. I love the foot stomp. I think it's cool.
Yeah, I think that's such a cool attack.
Yeah, because you've basically got a huge reach on it. What is it? It's 15 feet,
20 feet. Well, it's 20-foot reach for the stomp, and then it's a 15-foot burst from that center.
Right. So it's nearly the same as extending from the whole creature anyway. But you have like these sort of like 4 loose corners to do it from and really strategize with it. So that's cool. There is one thing I want to point out that when I did my cursory glance at the stat block before we started, was one thing that stood out was that I noticed that it said it does energy damage at one point, and I went, well, that's unspecific. I did not read thoroughly enough to actually have caught the environmental balance we could choose. So I double checked some details on energy damage, and I think it's a bit interesting that it only says choose acid, cold, electricity, or fire, because that's a free action to choose, which is cool, but you don't have to choose. So if you don't have to choose, what's the damage? And I think it's worth noting that sonic damage is also energy damage. And
they do have to choose. The trigger is when the spirit turtle begins their turn. So it's not an optional.
But it's a free action. I don't think
it is a free action, but the trigger is when they begin their turn. So it's not an optional free action like the knockdown or the grab, where you can choose not to do it. This is specifically triggered when the turtle starts its turn. So you have to choose. Or at least that's how it reads to me.
Right. If that's the case, I think it's debatable. I genuinely don't know the answer. But if that's the case, I don't like it. And what I would change is either making it mandatory and adding sonic damage to the list, or making it not mandatory, and if you don't choose, it does sonic damage. Whatever route adds sonic damage to that, because you are basically a giant turtle stomping the ground and creating a shockwave. I see no reason why it couldn't be sonic damage as well.
So the reason it's these 4 and not including like sonic damage or even like positive damage is because these are linked to its home world. These are it pulling power from its environment. So the theory is that if you're in a cold place, use cold. If you're in a fiery place, use fire. If you're in a watery place, use acid. If you're in an earthen place, use electricity. But it specifically says they are harnessing their connection within the world around them to augment their attacks. So those energies should thematically be chosen based on their environment.
Gotcha. So they are guiding you into a choice with the ability as well. Okay. The more you, now that you've re-expanded on it, apparently I wasn't listening earlier.
I don't think I dove into that because I didn't find it particularly relevant. But you've made a good point. You've made it relevant.
Yeah. Now, if we could just find a way to put them in a sonic environment, I could win this argument. What the hell is a sonic environment? They're at a rave.
this gargantuan spirit turtle just healing people at a rave. Maybe it started the rave with its pacifying aura. Like everybody just chilled the fuck out.
Chill out. We're just gonna listen to some good jams. It's no big deal. Stop.
Well, maybe we can find something to help facilitate that homebrew within its spell casting, because it does have spells. Because we can't seem to get away from this. It is of the primal
least
tradition.
Favorite thing.
The DC is 44.
Okay.
Which is not small. It's also not out of reach either. Like even for like a level 10 character, a 44 wouldn't really be out of reach with a natural 20.
Right.
It has one constant spell, and that is tongues, so it's constantly casting on itself at 10th level, like we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It has 2 at-will 4th level spells, the first being heal, the second being vital beacon, which essentially heal just radiates out of you.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so the exact text is it allows others to supplicate and receive healing once per round. Either you or an ally can use an interact action to lay on hands to regain hit points. Every time the beacon heals somebody, it decreases in strength. So it restores 40-10, the first creature 48, 46, 44. And then at the end of the 4th level, the spell ends. So
that is a neat spell.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. The next one is 3 times per day, Breath of Life at 5th level. You prevent a target creature from dying and restore hit points equal to 48 plus your spellcasting ability modifier. You can't use Breath of Life if the triggering effect was Disintegrate or a Distinguish or a Death effect. So the trigger for this is a reaction, and the trigger was any living creature within range would die.
Oh, crazy. Would die. Not gain the dying condition, but would die.
Would die, yep.
Wild. Really,
this is
cool.
from the Sorcerer Phoenix bloodline.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Which I believe was a later released bloodline.
I believe it was the
was it Secrets
APG,
of Magic?
I think. Might have been Secrets of Magic.
Oh.
Well, I feel like Fist of the Ruby Phoenix came out before Secrets.
No, it is Fists. Spoilers.
Oh.
It's a granted access thing, which is a bit weird for a bloodline. It's like spoilers, but not really, because unless you have a sorcerer that survives the whole adventure and at one point or up to the point of getting this as a reward, and because they can take like a dual bloodline feat if they want. So I don't know if you could retrain a bloodline. That would be a bit of a I would say no kind of area. I mean, but maybe
other
raw,
than via dialysis, possible. Probably not.
Yeah, but that's a bit of an odd one. So I don't think it's too bad of a spoiler, but it's still cool. I love that.
Yeah. The next one is a 6th level spell, twice per day restoration. This is pretty much exactly what you think it is. It hasn't really changed in any edition of any of the games.
Mm-hmm.
For 7th level, it has plane shift, self only, and then regenerate twice per day. Regenerate is an interesting one. It infused the creature with continuous healing, so it temporarily gains regeneration 15, which restore HP 15 hit points at the top of its round. This target cannot die from the damaging condition, like you mentioned when we talked about the turtle itself's regeneration.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. That's pretty cool. That's a 1 minute duration. Oh, it does say though, if its wounded value becomes 4 or higher, it stays unconscious until the wounds are treated.
Yeah.
So you can still effectively incapacitate someone. It's much harder. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
At 8th level, it has Moment of Renewal twice per day. This targets up to 6 creatures, and they get a day's worth of recovery in an instant. So any detrimental effects that would be gone after 24 hours are just gone, and they regain
Cool.
HP and recover from conditions as if they had had a 24-hour rest. However, they do not get to remake their daily preparations.
Oh, okay. It's still important though, because things like stupefied or drained are usually 24-hour recoveries per value, and some effects give you just like 2 or 3 at once, and that can really mess you up. Especially if you're in an environment and you know you're playing in a game where you feel like time is of the essence, you don't have time to take days of rest, which I mean, at least in our experience, we never do it. We always feel like we're like, we gotta go, and
Right,
which is not always true, but we just kind of how we end up playing. So it makes those conditions that much more, you know, brutal.
Yeah, absolutely. Then at 9th level, it has, again, twice per day, something called Field of Life. So I'd never heard of this spell before. This is, again, a divine and primal. A field of energy fills the area. Each living creature in that area regains 1d8 HP, and any undead creature that starts its turn in the area take 1d8 positive. This is sustained up to 1 minute and is a 20-foot burst with a range of 30 feet. So you can just throw this fucking dome out in the middle of a battlefield, and then everybody living in it gets HP at the end, and then everybody not gets hurt.
Crazy. Okay. Yeah, so look at the spell. This is a level 6 spell, but it's heightened at 8th and 9th, which increases the damage die or healing die. So it starts at 1d8, it goes to 1d10 or 1d12, which, I mean, it's funny how that seems, it's a 9th level spell in this case, and you're just doing 1d12, which feels low, like in your gut, but in the exact right circumstance for a minute, everybody is affected by it, you know. And if you have a whole bunch of allies and a whole bunch of undead in the same spot, 20-foot burst is not a small area in the grand scheme of things.
This is a horde color
map,
for
right?
sure.
Yeah, this is really good. Yeah.
Or even outside of combat, this is a great recovery spell. Like, I don't know how else you're going to get that much healing in 60 seconds. Like, that is so much healing.
Cool. Yeah.
Even at 6th level, that's so much healing.
Yeah, for sure. That's neat. Yeah, this is a divine and primal spell, and it's included in one of the major lessons for witches. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that, James?
No. Can't talk about it. Can't.
Oh, the dangers of doing multiple shows.
I know. Okay, so at 10th level, once per day, they have a spell called Revival. Yet another spell I haven't heard of because obviously I haven't looked at 10th level spells. I don't ever expect to have a character that lives to 20th level.
Seriously.
This is a burst of healing that soothes living creatures and temporarily rouses those recently slain. All living targets regain 10d8 plus 40 hit points. In addition, you return any number of dead targets to life temporarily with the same effects and limitations as raised dead. The raised creature have temporary hit points equal to the hit points you gave the living creature, but no normal hit points. Raised creatures can't gain HP back, and once revival's duration ends, they lose all temporary HP and die. Revival cannot resurrect creatures killed by disintegrate or a death effect, and it has no effect on the undead. So a really interesting spell, and I don't know when you would ever choose to use that. But that is, again, so much health. That is an insane amount.
This is like a last-ditch stand, death spiral, massive combat kind of thing. that I'm with you. I'm like, I have a hard time wrapping my head around that. I literally wish Cam was here right now because they would probably have an example for us. But yeah, that's really cool. It's the same effects and limitations as Raise Dead, which is a 6th level spell in turn, but can be heightened up to 10th in effectively. And oh man, like that's a spell that's, by the time you get that spell, like there's so many nested rules happening. You better be on top of it if you want to make the best use of it. Really cool.
And yeah, it just seems very situational. And I like situational shit, as I'm sure anybody who's listened to our actual play can tell. Like I love having something that's super niche that only ever comes in handy one time or 2 times. Like that's how I tend to pick my feats. Like Gilda, for example, has Titan Wrestler, and that's come in handy once, I think, in the history of the show.
Yeah.
So there's that. So I think it's great, but like you said, as a last ditch effort, why is that going to be like, I can't really see a reason why that would be my 10th level spell that I would pick as a cleric,
Right. I mean, I guess it depends on what your other options are for 10th level spells. Right. I don't know off the top of my head, of course, but yeah, it really depends. And especially given a cleric, you're a prepared caster. So, if you know what's ahead of you, maybe this is the best choice for the circumstance that's coming up. So
yeah, absolutely. And there are some ways to build a cleric where you can swap in and out spells on the fly.
Right. Yeah.
If I remember correctly, Arthur could do that with 10 minutes, like just.
Okay, cool. Assuming that's applicable to a 10th level spell, that's very powerful.
Yeah. And the last one is also once per day. It's called Primal Phenom. You direct...
Phenomenon.
I prefer Phenom.
Phenom's a different word.
So nature always refuses unnatural requests and might grant a different ability than the one you asked for. So you essentially try and do something. So on the list of things you can try is duplicate any spell from the primal list 9th level or lower to which you have access. Mm-hmm. Duplicate any spell from any other list of 7th level or lower. It must be common or you must have access to it. Produce any effect whose power is in line with the effects above. Reverse certain effects that refer to the wish spell.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's an effect that can only be reversed by the wish spell, I think like mummification or something like that, or like undead or what have you.
Yeah,
you can theoretically use primal phenomenon to beg your GM to have that wish effect.
Right. So here's the thing: is I recently realized this, and I'm not sure how I feel about it, but every spell tradition has an identical spell to this. I don't know if you're aware of this.
I am. Yeah.
Okay.
That's why it's called primal phenomenon as opposed to
right. As opposed to the divine's miracle spell or the occult's alter reality and so on. So it's cool. I'm a little bit annoyed to a degree that it's not unique. I know it's 10th level, and you kind of you almost don't want to give this much power to only one tradition. So I kind of understand that, but it would be nice if there was some variation. But they literally kind of have the same bullet points on it. It's like primal list of 9th level as opposed to arcane list or divine list. It's like it literally works down the exact same process. It just happens to be a different tradition. So it slightly bores me in a really pedantic way, but it is still a really cool spell. No doubt about that.
Yeah, I honestly agree with you completely. I think the two most interesting spells in this list are that Field of Life that just... And then Vital Beacon, I think, is a really interesting spell. And it's low enough, like a 4th level spell is low enough that it could get some real use,
Yeah.
At least by PCs.
In the weirdest way, it actually reminds me of like my World of Warcraft days, where I honestly can't remember what class it was. It might have been a monk, where they had like a healing build they could do, and like you can just basically you can kind of deposit healing things along the battlefield, and people can, and I think maybe priests could do it too. Like you could basically put in the area something that people can move to and take advantage of. So it reminds me of that. It's like as long as you're within that. Was it? Did it have a radius or no? You just. Oh yeah, just it's outward from you. And yeah, you just get to use it, and it kind of decreases with power. Yeah, it's very reminiscent of some of the MMO stuff that I've played, I guess. And it's like,
I
just think it's
I had
clever.
a high priest in Ragnarok
clever.
Online that did the same thing.
Yeah,
it would drop. It was a specific build of priest. It was called an Emmy, and I can't remember what it stood for. But you would essentially just drop these little bombs on the battlefield, and whenever another player walked over it, it would explode, and then there would be a radius, and of that radius, it would heal anybody in that area, but damage undead in the area. Like,
okay,
it was a really interesting and really situational spell. So we did a lot of undead zombie dungeon dives to try and get to that second level 100. But that was one of the tools we used was this ME spell where you just drop these little shit, and then you would go to it, you would heal, and then anybody chasing you would essentially just get eradicated off the board.
Yeah. That's neat. I love it. It's super fun. Yeah.
But
I'm with you. I think those are the cooler
for the giant
ones.
Turtle.
The giant spirit turtle.
The giant.
Not to be confused with the possibility of a stat block that's actually called giant turtle.
Correct.
Just in case. Yeah, I think this is a cool creature. This reminds me of when we ran the Kieran. We talked about the Kieran. And how this is very much a non-combatant, creature, most most It's got some shit if it's gonna get fighting, ideally
you gotta hit a DC 40 will save to even try to fight it.
Very ideally, it's on your side.
Yeah,
you're not likely to be fighting this thing if you're unless you're running an evil campaign of some kind. And where
this thing may be fighting you,
Phoenix, yeah,
it is. You are not gonna fight it. Like 10th level calm emotions is so much. It is so high. Yeah. And the fact that it's just a fucking passive aura is insane.
Yeah, I don't know where it would fit in Fists of the Ruby Phoenix because I've not read through that entire adventure. I've read some of it, but I would imagine I would hope that it's something like it's just a passive NPC that helps out and guides you along that sort of tournament, or it's a test, perhaps a high level test of some kind, so which the calm emotions thing is there to start, but it's like, okay, this is your final round kind of thing. Show me what you got, and then you have to.
I wonder if it's your reward at the end of the adventure is meeting this giant spirit turtle.
Well, the reward of the Ruby Phoenix tournament, which is effectively common knowledge at this point, so I don't feel like it's a spoiler, is to gain access to like a vault from the person who created the tournament, and which has extremely high level items. So maybe this is tied into that. But you are effectively able to pick a reward of a treasure trove of extremely valuable things.
Right. Or maybe you have to go appease the turtle, like have it grant you its favor in order to even take part in the final battle or something like that.
Yeah. I'm sure that it's a test along the way, because I'm pretty sure that the tournament, it's a lot of gnarly different things. It's not simply a Mortal Kombat,
Right.
Yeah. It's much, much more.
Okay, so that brings us to our final segment of the show. The homebrew, of which I have nothing. There is not a single thing I would possibly change about this because A, I don't ever intend to run a 20th level campaign, and I don't really fully understand what's required of it. But B, I just don't feel like I have a good enough grasp of second edition and how I would use this creature particularly in order to want to make some changes.
Yeah.
That's the spell list I don't hate.
Yeah. Right. That's rare.
Right, but it's I don't mind giving creatures spell lists as long as they're allies. It's when they're not allies that's when I have an issue with it. These are all helpful shit. Like obviously there's get the fuck out of dodge plane shifts, but the rest of it is designed to help people. So I'm here for that.
Yeah, I think I think I get it. Like I'm with you in that we're it really feels like we're in our early days for 2E, even though we've been doing it for a while now. Even myself, who's dove more into the rules than you have because I'm GMing, to a rather lengthy degree. But I also feel humbled by things like, Gabe's rant about the Tarrasque in episode 100. Whereas when we covered the Tarrasque, we didn't even consider the brokenness of the 5e. That was right over my head. I had no idea. So it's like we're never going to consider ourselves experts on this whole thing. But it gives me pause as we enter a new system for this. And I'm with you. Like, there's not much that would change. There's always at this point going to be something in the back of my head about sonic damage and that environmental balance. I can't not let it go. There's something about it. I don't know why, because I get it, but I also just think it should be allowed. Like, fuck it, it's stomping with a shockwave. Go for it. And the only reason I can think of why it might not be is sonic damage is much more rare, which makes it a little more powerful, which because you're less likely to have a resistance to it or immunity or something like that. Right. But it's level 21 creature. Who cares? Let it do it. Let it fuck shit up. But yeah,
and if you've got anything, listeners, okay. And if you listeners out there have anything, feel free to shoot us an email over at info@encounterthis.ca. If you like what we've done here, you can find us on patreon.com/unchartednorth. $5 a month will get you a handwritten thank you letter and a theme button and some stickers. $10 a month will get you the ability to suggest a creature that we cover. And a discount code to our merch store, which you can find at unchartednorth.com/shop. You can find us on Twitter at EncounterPod, Facebook and Instagram at encounter.pod, encounterthis.ca for all those show notes, links and stuff in the description below. If you are listening to this as a podcast, please rate and review on your platform of choice. If you are on YouTube, we'd appreciate it if you like and subscribe. This can be found on youtube.com/@encounterpod. And if you could tell a friend, we'd really appreciate it. But in the meantime, thank you so much, creatures, for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Until next time, creatures, thanks, as always, for listening to Encounter This.